While NFL free agency is actively going on and ultimately will be until the start of the regular season, we're going to dive in and grade teams' moves so far this offseason in terms of acquiring players or the decision to let players walk in free agency, and if they could have or should have tried to retain said player before letting them walk. Now, we're not going to dissect every single move for a team like the Patriots, who have been extremely active this free agency period, because we could in a sense spend a whole 10-minute video discussing the addition of this player or that player. Instead, for them specifically, we will discuss the moves they made as a whole, and for everyone else, moves here and there, and the grade to re-sign a player or the grade for acquiring a new player. These will be for true free agents that tested the market, so for example, Dak will not be in today's video, because after seeing what they had when he went down last year, well, there was no way Dallas was going to let him walk, and not surprisingly, they did not. Now, before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do, and it would be very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And we're going to start today's video with the Baltimore Ravens, who recently signed wide receiver Sammy Watkins. This is a signing we haven't discussed on the channel yet, and to be honest, with the way this roster is set up and with what they are going for, even if it is just a one-year deal, I love this signing. Watkins is a Super Bowl champion and knows what it takes to win a Super Bowl, and they got him for the surprisingly cheap price of just $6 million. While Lamar is above the level that Josh Allen was as a passer entering 2020, and he had an MVP to his name, and Josh Allen finished 32nd in completion percentage in his rookie and his second year, Lamar needs help to win a Super Bowl, and this is a perfect example of getting him the said help. And quickly, that's not a shot at Allen as much as it was making a comparison. Anyways, there's no doubt the Ravens have seen what the Bills have done by adding weapons around their franchise quarterback, and now in a sense it is their turn to do the same with Lamar as the Bills did with Allen. Allen has players like Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Cole Beasley, and also had John Brown this past year. That is a very solid receiving core, and while Baltimore's current receiving core of Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins isn't quite that, it is a good start for the former MVP in Lamar Jackson. And for what it's worth, I don't think they're done adding receivers, as they could very well address one on the first night of the draft. And all of this goes without me mentioning they have a very good tight end in Mark Andrews. So little by little, the Ravens are acquiring pieces for Lamar, and this Watkins signing goes a long way. And I have already addressed the guard signing in Kevin Zeitler, and I love it. Offensive line is so critical to a team's success, and protecting Lamar and bettering the run game is key for them moving forward. For the offensive signing in those two, A+. Now, the Ravens also had two pass rushers leave in Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue, and while I understand signing those guys to extension would have been tight with money, and especially Judon, I am not a fan of letting both go, and more specifically Yannick. They traded for him in the middle of the 2020 season to the Vikings, and I would have liked to see them re-sign him, especially considering he went to the Raiders for just a 2-year deal, and that is something the Ravens somehow, someway could have worked out. Whether they front-loaded it or made it incentive-driven or anything, I don't like them going into 2021 without a true number one pass rusher in the same conference as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. They could certainly address that position in the draft, but whatever rookie they draft at the end of the first round will not be as good as Ngakoue would have been this year. But what I will say about the Ravens is they are consistently at the top of the league for a reason and are consistently in the playoffs year in and year out. So while I don't necessarily agree with the decision right now, they will get this fixed and have an answer on opening day. From one AFC North team to another, we go to discuss the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been low-key very active this offseason. All season long last year, all everyone heard out of the Bengals was Joe Burrow is getting killed, and every time you saw a Bengals clip or a highlight on Twitter or whatever form of social media it was, Joe Burrow getting killed in a new way. Most notably, the sandwich hit the Eagles delivered and the Chase Young confrontation at the goal line. So this offseason they had to address the offensive line, and they did by signing tackle Riley Reiff. So entering 2021, their tackles will be Riley Reiff and Jonah Williams, and everyone is assuming they are going to get tackle Penei Sewell in the draft at number 5 overall. So for protecting their franchise quarterback and helping him not get absolutely mauled every game, the signing of Reiff, a player who is coming off of a career year in Minnesota, gets an A+. Another low-key great acquisition they have was signing veteran corner Mike Hilton from the division rival Pittsburgh Steelers. Hilton is a very underrated corner, and the Bengals have played him twice a year for the past couple of years, and they certainly know this better than anyone. So to get a good corner for a cheap price of $6 million per year is a good signing. What also benefits the Bengals is in that contract, they can get out of this deal after this year, so in theory, if Mike Hilton does not turn out the way they think he will after this year, then they are protected as a franchise. But with me praising Mike Hilton the way I did does not mean he is a franchise-changing number one corner, because if he were, then the Steelers would have somehow, someway kept him. But with playing players like Juju, Deontay Johnson, Odell, and Jarvis Landry, and with Hilton being as familiar with those players as he is, I love this signing at this point in time. Now, they also went out and got a big pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson from the Saints at a hefty price of 4 years and $60 million. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest Trey Hendrickson fan, but for the Bengals, I don't mind this signing strictly because they don't have that many big-name players to pay tens of millions of dollars to at this point, where they can't afford to keep their own guys because that is not the case. So good to address the pass rush in Hendrickson, and for that reason, I also like this signing. Now, another underrated signing they had was defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi. Larry has been a member of the Browns for the past 4 years, and again, they get a solid player on their defensive line for $6 million for this year alone. They should be more competitive this year, and I'm not saying they're going to be 12-4, but they should be more competitive, and I love all of these signings. So far for the Bengals, an A+ offseason. Next is the Minnesota Vikings, who quietly entered the offseason with a lot of needs and have done a good job addressing those said needs so far. If there was one thing the Vikings struggled with in all of 2020, it was defense. The offense consistently put up points as Kirk Cousins threw for 35 touchdown passes for the year, Dalvin Cook had over 1,900 total yards while missing a game, Justin Jefferson had 1,400 receiving yards, and Adam Thielen had 14 touchdowns. Having said all of those impressive offensive statistics that they had in 2020, that team went just 7-9, and the defense was a big reason for going just 7-9. There was no doubt during the 2020 season that defensive-minded head coach Mike Zimmer was absolutely beside himself and embarrassed, and for good reason. But what must be said is a lot of players were either out with injury or simply young in a league, and ultimately a division where they have to play Aaron Rodgers twice a year. Having two corners that were rookies in Cameron Dantzler and Jeff Gladney, not surprisingly, caused a lot of growing pains, and although those guys should improve in 2021, it was a rough year for them at times in their first year. So what did the Vikings do to help them out? They went out and got one of the best corners over the past 10 years in Patrick Peterson, who, while he didn't have a great 2020 statistically, the Cardinals didn't exactly help him out either. Now, having a great safety like Harrison Smith back there will only help Pat Pete out, and not only that, but the Vikings also signed veteran safety Xavier Woods to cope with the loss of free agent safety Anthony Harris, who went to the Eagles. Anthony Harris was a terrific player in 2019 as he led the league in interceptions, granted it was a tie, but nonetheless led the league in interceptions. However, Anthony was far from the player he was in 2019 this past year, and it definitely showed at times. There were plays where it seemed he was just mentally checked out and just didn't want to be there, and at times it seemed like the whole team was like that. The 2020 Vikings defense was by far the worst in the Zimmer era, and if signing Pat Pete and Xavier Woods wasn't enough, they brought another run-stuffing defensive tackle in Dalvin Tomlinson, who is essentially Linval Joseph 2.0. The Vikings were embarrassed by the Saints on Christmas Day when they gave up 6 rushing touchdowns to Alvin Kamara, and Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman essentially got together and said, "We are putting a stop to this, and this will never happen again." They have done all of this and brought back former Viking Mackenzie Alexander, who is a good corner depth. He brings good corner depth, all without cutting anybody, despite being nagged about Kirk Cousins' contract since the day he signed that back in 2018. They will be in heaven contention in 2021, and for doing all of this without giving up anyone, this offseason grade gets an A+. And the last team we will grade in with a few minor grades at the end is the New England Patriots. You can usually look at a team's roster and tell what type of mode they're in pretty quickly, and for them it is no different. A team is not this active in giving out more money in the past few weeks than they have in years of free agency, unless they're pushing for a Super Bowl title, and it is pretty clear that's what the Patriots are doing. They went out and brought in several players, and overall I liked what they did. Now, do I think they overpaid in some aspects? Yes, 100%, but again, they went 7-9 last year and are gunning for a postseason run, so if that's what it takes to get the said postseason run, then so be it. Bill won't coach forever, and there's no doubt he wants to match Tom with 7 rings and prove that he can win a championship without Tom, the same way Tom did this past year. So while they did sign players like Nelson Aguilar and Matt Judon and Hunter Henry, and while those players aren't Devontae Adams, TJ Watt, and Travis Kelce, these are all good moves because they are upgrades to what they previously had on the roster, and it only helps them get closer to their goal of winning a championship. And for that reason, they are getting an A for their offseason grade to date. Now, for some other player signings, and again, we're not getting to every single one, so there may be another video after this, basically a grading part 2 to further discuss these grades and signings. Now, Raiders fans, I want to address the Yannick signing. For as much as I criticize the Kenyon Drake signing, it wasn't that I think Drake is a bad player as much as I love your guy's boy in Henry Ruggs. I want the best for Ruggs' career and for him to get actual opportunities, and having 2 running backs like Drake and Jacobs will limit what he can do, which in a sense proves that it wasn't a smart first round pick if they don't target him again just like this past year. But what I want to say is I absolutely love the Yannick signing and could not praise it more. Him playing on the same defensive line as Max Crosby and Cleveland Farrell is huge, and I think it is only up from here for the Raiders and their fans. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world. We are less than 100 from 23,000 subscribers, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Make sure to follow me on Twitter if you like the content. Have a great day. Love you guys. Deuces. Peace.